Hey garden friends, today we're going to talk about 10 things you should know about clematis. And I'll give a few tips and tricks in there on growing them. I have other videos where I show how I plant them and grow them and prune them and all of that, and I will link those in the description box below. But let's just talk about those 10 things that you should probably know. So number one is the variety of types. So there's a lot of species and forms. There's very early blooming ones. There's very late, like fall blooming ones. There's small flowers, big flowers, and bushy types and types that scramble along the ground. That could be like a ground cover, or they use the other flowers around them for support. And there's also the ones that grow tall up and over an arbor if you so desire. And I have a few of each. So number two, bloom sizes and shapes. So there's a lot of different shapes and sizes. Some blooms are small and abundant, and the ones for me that have been small and abundant are like Ragucci, Betty Corning, and what's the other one? Princess Kate. And those all have the shape of the bell shape. And they're just as enchanting as the large flowered star-shaped ones, and that's another shape. The large star-shaped ones that have big flowers, there's also smaller star-shaped ones. There are doubles that sometimes they get a big pom-pom in the middle and the base is star-shaped. Some have different colored anthers in the center, so there's such a wide variety in the sizes and shapes. I would say a tip about the doubles, when you grow them, the first year, many times they will bloom single. And then the subsequent bloom, whether it's in the fall or the following season, will be double. So just keep that in mind if you plant a double and it blooms with a single flower. So I know I wondered the first time I grew it, and I had a single flower the first time. 3, the color spectrum. So clematis, they bloom in a wide range of colors. There's the blues, the purples, the pinks, there's red, there's white, there's creamy colors. I've not seen yellow, but I think there is one out there. I did research a ways back, but I've never seen like a true bright yellow or a bright orange. But they come in burgundies, so that color range there. And I have quite a few different ones. The bourbon, like I said, the shorter one I have, that's a nice, beautiful red. Not like a crimson red. It has a hint of burgundy in it, but not dark like a burgundy would be. So I think I'll try to bring up pictures of the ones I have and show you when I mention a name. So hopefully I have all the pictures. Okay. Pruning groups. Now this is what confuses a lot of people. There are 3 pruning groups. So understanding clematis pruning groups is essential for healthy growth. And that's because each pruning group has a different time frame to be pruned. Group 1 blooms on old wood and should be pruned after flowering. Now, when it says prune, actually what that means is you're just basically deadheading. You're not chopping it back very far. Supposedly, that isn't good because they do bloom on old wood. So the following year, if you pruned it back hard, you wouldn't get any blooms. So that's pruning group 1, and it usually is the earliest blooming. Now, there are some fall blooming ones, so bear with me. Group 2 blooms on both old and new wood. So moderate pruning with that. Now, sometimes I'll prune it back hard, the group 2. And I've shown in my pruning videos where I'll let it bloom in spring, summer, early summer, and then I'll prune it back hard, like to 12 inches. And then it regrows through the summer, and I'll get another bloom in fall. It won't be as prolific as the one in spring, but that's how I've done it successfully in the past and gotten 2 really nice blooms, frames from a type 2 clematis. Now, not all of them will behave the same, so you have to be aware of that. So that leaves us to group 3. And group 3, it blooms on new wood, and it can be pruned hard in early spring. I have also done it in the fall if it's on a framework that is going to be hit with a lot of heavy snows because that can break it down too. And I've been completely successful with that. And then come spring, it's ready to go and fine. A lot of people mostly recommend that you do that kind of pruning on the type 3 in early spring, late winter, early spring. But most of them don't have the same conditions as I do with the heavy wet snows we get in winter. And many times it'll snow up through May. So I can't get out there and prune it the way that I want to prune it. So that's why I do it. It's usually late fall, getting close to where it's dormant anyways. So it doesn't start growing until it warms up in many times late spring. This year is a completely different year for us. We have had just outstandingly weird winter weather, and it's been extraordinarily warm, except for this last storm that, I don't know if you can see the tree that's down in my back garden still. Yeah, so it's just been a really weird year. But normally, that's how I do it. And I do have a video or blog post on how I prune my type 3. So many of the group 2 and group 3, you can kind of fudge as far as the pruning with it. Like with the group 2, you can cut it back down hard in the spring, have it flush out. It will bloom later in the season, in the summer, rather than the way I do it. I prune it in the fall, it blooms in the spring, then I prune it after the first bloom, and then it blooms again in fall. And I don't normally do anything after that until the next season and let it bloom. I've gotten better blooming from my type 2 clematis doing it that way than what more normally people say in blooming it in late winter, early spring. So I hope that made sense. So 5, support structures. Yes, support structures for most clematis is an excellent idea. So they need proper support to grow well. Train them on trellises, arbors, fences, or through shrubs, especially the ones that are like the ground cover ones. They don't swamp the shrubs, but it's like if you have a shrub that blooms in early spring and then it doesn't bloom, it's just like greenery in your garden. Training one of these clematis through it will make it look like that shrub is blooming again, but it's really the clematis. So it prevents them from tangling, and it showcases the blooms best if you give them the supports of the arbors, trellises, and even through the shrubs. So planting location 6 is, while it's commonly said that clematis like their roots in the shade and their heads in the sun, that isn't a strict rule, and I can validate that for sure. Mulching around the roots is enough to keep them cool and moist, and generally they thrive with that. Mine do better, and I'll tell you why. You know what? I'll say this in number 8 because it pertains to that. So watering needs. Clematis prefer consistent moisture. Yes, if you let them dry out, like back here in my secret cottage garden, the soil is sandier and I have a harder time keeping the soil moist. The clematis that I've grown back here has not made it, except for one over there by my tool shed, and that's an HF Young. That one does beautifully there. I don't know what it's looking like right now because it got smushed by the tree. But yeah, that was the only one back here, and I've planted several. So it was just a matter of I didn't have irrigation in yet, and they didn't have the consistent moisture. So I do, from experience, know that they do like that consistent moisture. But you got to be careful not to overwater because you can develop root rot, especially if you have more clay type soil. So you want to keep them moist but not waterlogged. So number 8, yes, here's the disease resistance. You know, clematis can suffer from clematis wilt, which is a fungus. And all of a sudden your clematis will be doing beautiful and all of a sudden it'll start dying back. And you're like, what happened? Yeah, I've had that happen to me out front with my one clematis. I can't remember the name of it. It's right there on the tip of my tongue, but I can't. But it grows with my Eden Rose, and I do have a lot of video of that I'll share. So this often is caused by fungal infection. Keeping the base of the plant free from debris and ensuring good air circulation can help prevent this. Yes, also, if it gets sun. Now that goes counterintuitive to what everybody says about it being planted in shade, the roots in shade. I have found that when mine in the front did die back from the wilt. That when I cleared away all the foliage around it, because the roots were completely shaded by the other foliage, and pulling back the mulch just a little bit, that it recovered and started growing again. And I was reading up on the wilt and all of that, but it did say that good airflow, as well as if the sun hits on the base a bit, it can prevent that fungus even better. So keep that in mind when you're planting it, that you don't necessarily want the roots in the shade. Because if you're like me, all of a sudden a healthy clematis will start dying from this wilt fungus. So yes, that's the point I wanted to bring out. So 9, pest management. Look out for earwigs, slugs, and snails, especially when it's first sprouting in spring, especially. That's when there's a lot of moisture in the soil. That's when the slugs and snails are really thick. When it warms up, the earwigs can be a really big problem. So you can use slug bait if you wish. There's a Sluggo Plus that also will treat for earwigs. But I use personally, it's called First Saturday Lime. I will make a ring around the base of the plant, not touching the plant, where the slugs and them will not cross over. It repels pests, it doesn't kill them, and that has worked for me in the past few years. Also diatomaceous earth. But the diatomaceous earth, usually for it to work well, needs to be kept dry. And if you get spring rains, then the lime, the First Saturday Lime is probably better. So number 10, extended bloom time. Many clematis varieties offer extended bloom times, with some even reblooming later in the season. Now, I explained in the pruning how I get a rebloom later in the season. So varieties like Josephine and Chloe can put on a show for months with proper pruning and care. Also, I have grown one that was called Supernova that just bloomed for a very long time. The bell-shaped ones, Raguchi, they bloom all summer long. And other ones, when you go to purchase a clematis from a clematis grower, like Brushwood Nurseries is one of my very favorite clematis suppliers, and in their catalog, online catalog, they will tell you if it blooms spring, summer, fall, if it blooms all through it, what have you. So some of them will only give you the spring and fall bloom, some will just bloom in the spring, and some will continue through the summer, all summer long. It may, like my Warsaw Nike, blooms later than my other type 2 clematis, but it does bloom longer. So that's a hint. And with the Warsaw Nike, if I prune it back, I don't prune it back hard, like down to 12 inches. I like shave it with my pruners, and I shave off all the dead heads. Sometimes I get some blooms that are still blooming, but that makes it bloom again. So, because it blooms on new wood, when you shave off all the old flowers, then it puts out new vines, and then it blooms again. So that's how I get a longer bloom time for my Warsaw Nike, which is a type 3, sometimes considered a type 2. So that is my 10 tips or things you should know about clematis. These should help you to cultivate beautiful, healthy clematis vines. Their blooming habits depends upon the type, and you can find that in the information, as I said, on Brushwood Nursery's website. And yeah, just enjoy growing and experiment with different ones, different types, and you will be thrilled with your clematis in all their lovely colors. I love planting them with my climbing roses on my arbors because roses can bloom intermittently, and they provide some blooms with when the roses aren't, and they bloom with the roses. Another one, I just thought of it, that blooms a long, long time is Arabella and also Charlie Brown. Both of those bloomed continuously through last summer, even though they were pretty fresh in the garden. And year after year, they will bulk up more and more, especially with the right pruning, and you will get even thicker and more vigorous vines with just an enormous bloom that will be impressive and knock your socks off. So Okay, now my Jacqueline Dupree rose was fine, but underneath there is my Violet's Pride in its pot. It's underneath the tree. It got a direct hit. Let's see if I can show you the pot rim on the other side. This is the stick that was sticking inside of the pot. And yeah, there's the pot. So I don't know if poor Miss Violet is going to make it. That's it, my friends. I hope you have a great day. Get out in your garden if the weather is up for it and enjoy. I'll see you next time. Bye.